Corruption in the justice system is punishing me for protecting my children.
A Colorado cop is accused of raping his daughter, but it's the girl's mother who had to report to jail. It's all connected back to a reunification therapist and what the mom says is a corruption in the system. We're breaking it down with Colorado attorney Eric Faddis. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner. A retired police officer in the Denver area is accused of raping his own daughter for years, starting when she was just 5 years old. He's also accused of sexually assaulting his ex-wife's 2 daughters, whom he adopted. Pickrel-Hawkins is free on bond right now after being charged with 6 felony counts of sexually assaulting a child and 1 misdemeanor count for child abuse. According to court documents, that child abuse count is connected to an alleged assault that occurred in Costa Rica while the family was on vacation in 2018. Hawkins allegedly held his eldest son underwater while he blacked out. The boy, now an adult, told police he believes the assault was connected to him catching his father allegedly molesting one of his sisters. Rachel Pickrel-Hawkins currently has custody of the couple's youngest sons, ages 10 and 13. She told the Denver Gazette that they had been living in a domestic violence shelter, but Hawkins is fighting to get sole custody of the 2 boys, and the family has been ordered to participate in a reunification therapy program. The therapy is supposed to help repair the children's relationship with their father. But Pickrel-Hawkins claims that the so-called therapy is actual psychological manipulation and coercion. She refused to allow the boys to participate anymore, which resulted in her being held in contempt of court. The judge ordered her to report to jail for several weekends in a row as punishment. Pickrel-Hawkins has been documenting her experience on TikTok. She posted this video before she reported to the county jail for the first time.
Corruption in the justice system is punishing me for protecting my children. So today I begin 7 weekends of jail in the Weekender jail program because I will not stop protecting my children and speaking out about the abuses that have happened to them that have now resulted in criminal charges against my former spouse, and they are 7 counts of felony sex assault on child by person in position of trust and misdemeanor child abuse, covering all 6 of my children, even my adult children. And the judges and the magistrates and the reunification therapists that are forcing contact with my children's abusers are responsible for this. And I am one of many moms out there fighting to keep my babies safe. I've gotten a lot of support, and I am so very grateful for that, because this has been a very lonely road. It's been a very hard, difficult road, but it's one that I know that God has permitted, because he's building me into his warrior, and I wouldn't be going this morning if he hadn't prepared me. So I intend to go in there and serve this unjust time, but I'm going to do it with dignity and integrity.
When she was released the following Sunday, Pickrel-Hawkins posted another video saying she spoke with other women inside the jail dealing with the same issues with court-ordered reunification therapy.
There's more to this, and I'm going to see to it that it comes to an end, and that my children and any other children are saved from this.
Pickrel-Hawkins has to report to the jail for 6 more weekends. Hawkins has denied the allegations against him and posted a $50,000 surety bond in July. He has to wear a GPS ankle monitor while he's out on bond. The lawyer representing him in both his criminal case and divorce proceedings, Christopher Estelle, said in an August court filing that Pickrel-Hawkins is not a credible witness and is highly manipulative, according to the Denver Gazette. You may be asking, how can a judge consider giving custody of young children to a parent who is currently facing such serious charges? Well, the order from the judge came while the investigation into Hawkins was ongoing, but official charges had not yet been filed. The judge wrote in one ruling, the court also notes that no criminal charges have been filed, and the Department of Human Services findings can be based on statements of the child alone with no corroborative evidence. The charges came later that same month. The judge also said that the allegations against Hawkins do not involve the two children he's trying to get custody of. That magistrate upheld a ruling from a previous judge that required weekly 2-hour reunification therapy sessions, some with the father present and some with the boys on their own. Court documents show Christine Bassett is the marriage and family therapist assigned to the case through the Lighthouse Christian Counseling Network. Pickrel-Hawkins was accused of interfering with the court-ordered therapy, but she claims that the intense sessions are harming the children. The mother says she has requested the court to allow her to find a different therapist, but says she was denied. She says she arranged for family members to care for her youngest children when she reports to jail for the next several weekends. And Michael Hawkins has made headlines before for a different reason. He was one of the first police officers to respond to the Aurora movie theater shooting in 2012, when 12 people were killed at the premiere of The Dark Knight Rises. He testified during the shooter's trial, recalling how he carried a child's body from the theater. Hawkins' daughter told investigators that her father suffered from PTSD after witnessing that horrific scene, and she said that the first time he allegedly assaulted her was later that same year. Hawkins medically retired from the Aurora Police Department in 2018. Again, he has denied all the allegations against him. I want to quickly highlight a sponsor of Sidebar that makes episodes like this possible, and that's Noble Gold. If you're worried about the future of this economy, this could be the company for you. With so much uncertainty these days, it's natural to fret about the security of your retirement savings. But there's one asset that stands the test of time, and you guessed it, that's gold. For centuries, gold has been a hedge against market volatility and economic stability. By rolling over your existing IRA or 401k into a self-directed gold IRA, you can enjoy the potential for a long-term growth and stability. Diversify your portfolio with a tangible asset that has a real value. Setting up your gold IRA has never been easier with Noble Gold's investment streamlined process and expert guidance. And right now, Noble Gold will give you a 10-ounce silver American flag bar if you open a qualified account. So go to lawandcrimegold.com now. Again, that's lawandcrimegold.com, or call them at 877-646-5347 and mention Law and Crime. There's always a risk of investment and no guarantee of any kind. I'm joined now by Colorado-based criminal defense attorney Eric Faddis. Now, Eric, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, a former Colorado police officer accused of sexually assaulting children, one of which was his ex-wife's daughter who he adopted, but he's free from jail. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think an irony that a lot of people are picking up on is the fact that he is charged with sex assault on a child and child abuse. He is free. He's out. He's a free person. Whereas the mother, who says she's trying to protect her children from him, has now been sentenced to jail for allegedly disobeying a court order. And so a lot of people are saying, "What's going on? How could it be that he's out and she is in jail?"
And are you surprised bond was even issued in Hawkins's case and that it was just $50,000 given the severity of the allegations against him?
50,000 seems low to me, especially for the nature of those charges. I've seen much less severe charges get even higher bonds than 50,000. Some people have speculated, hey, this person is a former police officer. Did that influence or bias somehow affect the bond and how these proceedings have gone? The jury's still out on that question, but bond is rather low.
And what are your thoughts on him being accused of sexual acts against children, one of which, again, was one of his own daughters, but is fighting for custody and sole custody at that for his sons, who he shares with his ex-wife?
Yeah, the family court judges are definitely have a difficult role, right? That they have, they're dealing with extremely weighty concerns. It's high emotion in these cases. These are very serious allegations, and oftentimes, while that investigation is pending, while the case is pending, that person is prohibited from having contact with minors in many of these cases. Here, he's seeking to resume contact with children. And so the mother is understandably upset about that and objecting to what's called this reunification therapy process.
And let's get into that, the reunification therapy program. Why do you think that was suggested, given the allegations he still faces? Also, given that he's also accused of physically abusing his son that he's trying to reunite with?
That's a bit of a head scratcher in terms of why the judge thought this was appropriate. My understanding is that the reunification therapy was ordered before the dad was actually charged with some of these offenses. And there may be a hearing coming up to determine the appropriateness of reunification therapy going forward. It's sort of this flowery, nice notion that we'd love for all the children to, reunite with all of their parents and everything will be hunky dory and that'll be great. But I think the realities of life show us that that's not always the best course of action. And we're really seeing that illustrated here in this case.
And court ordered reunification. What are your thoughts on that entire program? Especially, this case is very unique. I understand maybe how it could work in the cases of two divorced parents wanting to reunite, making sure that their kids are okay. But in this case, with parents, one of which is accused of these horrible acts against children, what are your thoughts on that entire program?
Generally speaking, I think courts should endeavor to rehabilitate, to try to make things better in terms of relationship dynamics where appropriate. But I think there's a line there. And I think that, some folks have said, gosh, is this the government going too far into the personal lives of these folks and saying, oh, hey, we know what's best for you. We know what's best for your kids. Whereas the mom is saying, whoa, wait a sec. It's not best for my kids to be around this person at this time. He's facing charges for sex assault on a child and child abuse.
And, we've kind of touched base a little bit at the beginning of this interview, but bringing us to talk about Rachel in this case, I think a lot of our viewers, everyone who reads about this case, it's just so surprising to hear a mom is thrown into jail for doing what she believes is best for her children, protecting her children. What is your reaction and what are your thoughts on how she's dealing with all of this right now?
What a terrible position to be in. Not only are you going through a divorce, which is a huge bummer as it is for anybody's life, but on top of that, you're dealing with these child custody issues, these severe allegations against the father, and she appears to be just trying to take measures that she can within her own power to protect those kids. Now we need to make sure that there are court orders that are valid and that are enforced. But it appears that she's kind of engaging in a little bit of civil disobedience, in my opinion, here, where she's saying, "Hey, this order is unjust, and and following it is going to subject my children to future harm. So I'm not going to do it." And she's been slapped with a jail sentence as a result.
And what type of legal actions could she take in this case? Can she take any legal actions in this case?
Contempt is hard to get out of. Contempt is essentially that the allegation that she knowingly defied a lawful order from the court and that she interfered with this reunification therapy. Sometimes you can challenge contempt on the basis that the order was vague. Sometimes you can challenge it on the basis that she didn't knowingly violate it. Instead, her headspace was somewhere else. She was trying to do something else. There's also a possible choice of evils defense here in Colorado. If you are sort of forced to break one law in order to avoid some more serious harm, then you could raise a choice of evils defense. And the judge had other options besides putting her in jail. The judge could have fined her, could have taken other measures, but he didn't. And so now we're at the juncture where she's defending against this contempt charge and the impending jail sentence.
And how much of the children's voices can be heard in this type of case? Is there any possibility that they can go to a lawyer, and I'm just kind of giving a scenario here, go to a judge and tell the courts, I don't want to be near my dad at all. I don't want to be around him. I don't want this. This is not something I want. I agree with my mom. Do you think that's a possibility at all in this case?
As a general rule, in Colorado, once children reach a certain age, and I believe these children have reached that age, they do get a say in terms of parenting time and in terms of custody, in terms of who they want to be with. And so they can relay that to the judge typically, and the judge is supposed to give weight to that. Now, it's not a deciding factor. The judge has to look at other variables as well. But certainly the children can attempt to advocate for that. I'm not sure if a guardian ad litem had been appointed for any of these children, but if so, that person can stand in as the advocate for the child and the child's best interests in conveying to this judge that apparently these children may not be in favor of the reunification with the father, at least at this time.
And do you think we'd be having this discussion or even talking about this case if, say, Hawkins was accused of drug dealing or accused of murder or something along those lines, and he wasn't a police officer or a former police officer that also used to be hailed as a hero, do you think we'd even be having this conversation given that Hawkins was at one time this decorated hero in Colorado? A lot of people looked up to him, a lot of people aspired to kind of be as brave as him during the shooting that had happened about a decade ago. But do you think that we'd even be having this conversation if he wasn't a police officer and he was accused of something else like murder or drug dealing?
The fact of Hawkins's former career as a police officer, his apparently heroic efforts in the theater shooting in Colorado, and then the fact of these very severe inflammatory allegations against him, I think has pushed this case to the forefront. It's present in our minds now. Whereas if those aspects would have been absent, I'm not sure it would have seen the light of day. But I think a big part of it is this irony where he's out, even though he's facing extremely serious charges, and she has been sentenced to jail. And everyone is kind of saying, hey, this seems backwards. What's going on? What actions do we need to take to try to rectify this in our community?
Now, say you were Rachel's defense attorney. What type of advice would you be sharing with her at this time?
You know, um, Unfortunately, in dealing with court orders, it can be a delicate dance, and you don't want to do anything that is against your moral constitution. On the other hand, you don't want to sit in jail for 7 weekends in a row. So, is there kind of a healthy balance where the mother can still take measures to protect her kids, perhaps filing motions for additional supervision during this reunification process for receiving medical records and notes in terms of what happened, but also trying to not knowingly defy the court order or at least get the order changed. Because if she remains obstinate, while it may be a moral victory, it's still going to result in her being behind bars at the end of the day, and that's not best for the kids either.
And does Hawkins have any legs to stand on when it comes to his fight for sole custody of his children? Do you think that there's any type of way that could actually happen?
It's certainly possible. We've got to understand at this point the allegations against Hawkins are just allegations, and he's presumed innocent, and he has not been convicted of sex assault on a child or child abuse with respect to these allegations. And so the judge needs to take that in consideration. My thinking is it might make sense to sort of stay the custody ruling while the criminal case is going on. And if Hawkins beats the case, then certainly there's a strong argument that he should receive some significant portion of custody. If instead he cops a plea or is convicted, that of course changes the dynamic in terms of what's best for the kids and whether they would be safe around him for any period of time.
And say he is convicted in the case. I know at this point he is not, but if he is convicted in this case, does he even have legs to stand on there as well too? Like, could a judge force his children to visit him, see him? How would that kind of work?
It appears that this case is a good illustration of it, of that there's a trend in those courts to encourage this ongoing contact with both parents, even in light of some very serious allegations. And just because a person is convicted of a certain crime, that doesn't necessarily divest their parental rights with respect to the children. And so I could see a court, even in light of a conviction, moving towards some possibility of contact down the road. Now, these kids may become to the age of majority before that contact would be appropriate post conviction. And so that may resolve the whole thing, and the kids can decide once they're adults whether they want to see their dad or not.
And kind of going back to Hawkins being praised as a hero prior to these allegations coming out, and then he medically retired from duty, and then allegedly sexually abused his daughter the same year that the shooting happened, and it continued for years. What are your thoughts on just that added aspect of kind of that downfall from hero to he was diagnosed with PTSD from our understanding and then is accused of these horrible allegations? What are your thoughts on kind of that fall from grace in a way?
I think Hawkins' defense team, will use that as mitigating circumstances. They're going to say, hey, this person made a substantial contribution to this community. It's my understanding that he allegedly brought out a wounded 6-year-old from the theater shooting. And so if all that's true, then he absolutely did make such a contribution. That's significant. The fact that he has PTSD and other issues because of it, and that could have contributed to his behavior, that's significant. But I think the mother is alleging that this abuse occurred not only after the theater shooting, but also before. And so that cuts against sort of looking at Hawkins with a sympathetic lens. And so we'll have to see kind of how his defense team plays that. But they do have some, cards in their hand that they can play.
Well, Eric Faddis, I really appreciate your thoughts and your insight into this case. Before we sign you off, is there anything else you would like to add?
Just that I think it's healthy to have this sort of public discourse about what's going on in the courts. Sometimes it's so easy for those processes to be kind of siloed and just specific only to the individuals involved, and they never, the case never sees the light of day. I think the fact that we're talking about what is the court's proper role, how best do we protect children, how best do we foster ideal outcomes with families. These are all important questions, and this case has got us talking about it.
All right, Eric, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
Good to be with you.
Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of Sidebar. You can always check out more episodes and subscribe to us anywhere you listen to your podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. I'm Elizabeth Millner, and this has been Sidebar presented by Law&Crime.